So, good morning, everyone. My name is Achman Shekhar, and on behalf of the IPR chair here at Nalsar, I welcome all of you to the seminar that is IP Issues in the Post COVID World. Today, for our keynote speaker, we have Professor Prabodh Ganguly, who's the CEO of Vision IPR Bombay, and he'll be opening this session for all of us with his insightful speech that he has prepared. Professor Ganguly, if that is fine with you, do you mind starting?
Okay, so is that okay? Then we'll start. And I assume we have about 15 minutes to 20 minutes maximum,
Yes, sir.
right? So we will take just about that much time. So at the moment it is what? Exactly 9:07. So we will finish off by 9:20, 20:25. Okay. So I have titled my short presentation as Touching the Horizon and Feeling Beyond. The reason I put it that way is that the whole IPR landscape has been changing so sharply that we need to really revisit and relook at ourselves, specifically vis-a-vis all the IPR laws and regulations that govern them. And in doing so, I do not restrict myself only to the pandemic, but in general, even without the pandemic, we need, time is now ripe to really relook at all the IPR laws at our end. It was very important from all point of view. The great WHO's statement that everybody is not safe. A person is not safe if everybody is not safe. So the question that comes in, this safety, not only in terms of knowledge, but in terms of every other element that we are going to encompass with. Okay, starting with that. So I start with this. And therefore, we start with a very broad perspective of three international agreements or conventions. I won't go into the details of those, but nevertheless, just to touch on them, because they have major bearings on what we are going to do today and in the future. The first one I would like to mention is the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, which came to force on 3rd January 1976. I'm not going to the details of it, but the essential feature is that it gave in its deliberations, brought in to take part in cultural life, to enjoy benefits of scientific progress and its applications, to benefit from the protection of moral and material interest resulting from any scientific, literary, or artistic production which he is the author. Now, when you look at this aspect, this brings in all the features that are related to creative, all the creations of the human mind, be it scientific, literary, or artistic production. If you look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly in Paris in 1948, what did the resolution bring in? Among various other things, the essential part was right to property. So you must recognize that it did not say intellectual property, but it said right to property. Very important, right to education, freely to participate in cultural life of community, to enjoy the arts and to share in scientific advancement and its benefits, right to the protection of moral and material interest resulting from scientific, literary, or artistic production of which he is the author. So again, you bring in this in 1948, which started it all off. It brought in all the elements that are linked to creativity of the human mind. When you look at something more recent, that is 2007, United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. What did it essentially say? Right to maintain, control, protect, and develop their cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, and traditional cultural expressions, as well as the manifestation of their sciences, technologies, and cultures, including human and genetic resources, seeds, medicines, knowledge of the properties of fauna and flora oral traditions, literatures, designs, sports and traditional games, and visual and performing arts. So again, you look at this one, it sort of it encompasses all the creative aspects of human mind. So these are the, so I would like to really place the entire debate on intellectual property rights, keeping this perspective in mind. That's the first part. The second part, which is very important for us to recognize, is the present, what are known as the SDGs, so the sustainable goals. Now, if you look at it, there are 17 of them. And if you look at across all the 17, it brings in again all the aspects of development for sustainable development. And obviously, creativity of the human mind is going to play a very important role, be it in industry, innovation, and infrastructure, be it in terms of reduced inequalities, be it in terms of no poverty, no hunger, good health, quality education, etc., 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 including clean water and sanitation. So, you look at all these, and therefore, whenever we are looking at the whole aspect of creativity of the human mind, we are addressing issues that touches every element of our society. So looking at this from this perspective, I wanted to bring in a general concept, and that is that for sustainable societal growth, we need this sustainable societal growth will be powered by what? Or is powered by continual research. And I emphasize on the word continual, right? It's a continual research and innovations. But with what? With relevance in time, relevance in context, decisiveness, excellence, inclusiveness, fairness. And this is all in real-time dynamic synergy with each other. So the dynamic synergy is a very important part. And that is why we need to look at all the laws associated with service knowledge and trade and other aspects all together holistically and not just in parts. So therefore, that's the first part. But then this dynamic synergies with whom and who are the stakeholders in that, in society. One, of course, is the operating stakeholders such as wellsprings of knowledge and crucibles of learning. So these are all the knowledge creators like NALSAR, like the IITs, like the universities, like the colleges, like the schools, etc., and all the R&D institutions that go with it. Then with that, you have the other set of stakeholders, and those are the nourishing sources. So the funding agencies become very important and an integral part of the societal process. Simply generating the knowledge and creating the knowledge is not important. And therefore, to make it useful to society, you need knowledge converting agents. And the knowledge converting agents are industries, entrepreneurs, NGOs, government agencies, etc. So the knowledge creators need not necessarily be the knowledge converting agents. So there is some sort of a transfer of this particular knowledge from the knowledge creators to the knowledge converting agents. And that dynamics is going to play or does play a very important role. And then, of course, significant for us to know is that there are facilitators. There are knowledge brokers on one side and governments on the other side. Therefore, the policies become very important, and the knowledge brokers also play a very significant role. And all this functions or is supposed to function with empowerment in new ethical and legal frameworks. The reason I use the term new ethical and legal frameworks is because the context changes with time, and therefore we need to renew the ethical and legal frameworks as we go along in time. So therefore it keeps it relevant all the time, and it's a dynamic process. So there is never a time of static part of it. Looking at innovations, we take any innovation. It starts with ideation, goes to proof of concept, goes into a product, process, or services, through a developmental route, and then it goes into commercialization. Into what? Commercialization of tangibles. And therefore, you're converting an intangible into a tangible asset at that stage. And it becomes a tangible asset only when society accepts those innovations, uses those innovations, and that's when our inventions and all the other creations of the human mind get transformed into innovations because they become acceptable to society and society begins to use it. Important for us and significant for us at the moment to recognize the following facts. That is, collapsing of innovation cycle times. We know that the cycle times have immensely, collapsed. By the time there is some product or process that comes in, we are going through a process of very, very quick obsolescence. And therefore, what we need, the need of the hour, is facile, very important, and affordable knowledge access, use, reuse, creation, and commercialization. And what we have recognized and realized during these COVID times, that the need to collaborate, network, share, protect, and create a framework for shared benefit is extremely important for sustenance. And all this is where the intellectual property right driven processes become relevant. Now we look at these aspects as of today, and that's where I say touching the horizon and then going beyond the horizon for tomorrow. In the next 10 minutes, that is what I'm going to look at. And therefore, one of the aspects we also need to recognize and realize is the whole issue of open educational resources, because we are also in the process of human resource development or human capability building. And in that, one has recognized that open educational resources are going to play a very, very important role. And therefore, our IPR laws will have to be tuned or should resonate or should reflect the spirit behind open educational resources as well. Keeping this in mind, we go to the next part. That is, Government of India had announced, the new education policy, the national education policy or the new education policy of 2020 for an empowered knowledge society. And what were some of those key elements out of that big document? Use of extensive technology in teaching and learning, removing language barriers, increasing access for the Divyang students, and educational planning and management. It also talked about a national depository of high quality resources of foundational literacy and numeracy will be available on the digital infrastructure of knowledge sharing, Diksha. Access to downloadable and printable versions of all textbooks will be provided by all states, union territories, etc. And NCRT would help to conserve the environment and reduce logistical burden. Steps would be taken to enhance online accessibility of library books, etc., 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 and to build a digital infrastructure, educational digital content and capacity, ensuring equitable use of technology, content creation, digital repository, and dissemination. So all this, has been re-emphasized by the Honorable Finance Minister when she presented the budget. And when you look at all these things, is it only technology-based? Answer is no. That unless the law supports all this, we need to therefore review our intellectual property rights to see whether our present day intellectual property rights would support these sort of thing, or what are the changes required in our intellectual property laws to really make this sort of dream into a reality in India, for example. As we go along, I just want to emphasize on 4 key aspects of intellectual property rights. The first part is knowledge ownership. Who owns the knowledge? That's the first part. Second, that these are rights which are territorial, and the term is time limited, as we understand. Then, of course, we know that each and every one of these has got a certain set of exceptions, which all of us understand and know. And a very important aspect, and that there is some sort of a relationship or interrelationship between the rights and obligations of the right holder. Now, the question that comes in, that in the present day context, we therefore have to review and look at all aspects of knowledge ownership. Number one, rights that are territorial and time limited. And here, I would like to bring in, apart from other aspects of the digital world or the digital technologies bring in, today, as you're aware, that in the last 2 years or 2.5, 3 years, the whole issue of anti-suit injunctions has become a reality. In one of the cases where, the two parties concerned, okay, one of the courts in China brought in a whole concept of or actually issued an anti-suit injunction. And then the Delhi High Court, in 2001, really came out with an anti-suit injunction. And therefore, the issue of territoriality in our judicial systems is now become a reality, and we'll have to address that particular issue as well. So things are not obvious. We need to really look at, dissect each and every aspect of these four terms which have been put here. Obligations. We now need, in the post-COVID world, to look at this term obligations in a very, very definitive way and try and list out with some level of clarity whether it's a patent, whether it's copyright, whether it's design, or whether it's any of the other intellectual property rights. What are those obligations that would be sort of innately linked to the rights? And therefore, the right holder must understand that these are my obligations. Should I not meet those obligations, then the society could take certain actions on me. And similarly, the associated laws with them, with the intellectual property, like you have the competition laws and the other things. So we need to keep a holistic umbrella in front of us to really address many of these issues. And these are the things that we need to look at very, very carefully and critically. The other part, which is there, and I brought in this particular term sometime in 2002 or 2003, they created this term called knowledge. The knowledge politics. I combined the two words, knowledge politics, into knowledge, and actually, applied for a trademark and got it. Knowledge. Today, as you see in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, as it's going on, this issue of knowledge has now suddenly come to the forefront. You realized in the last 1 week or 10 days during the Russia-Ukrainian conflict that intellectual property rights has suddenly come to the fore. And now we are in a situation that when US says, well, we will not recognize the Russian system or whatever as a part of all the trade embargo and the other parts out there, Russia would obviously retaliate and say that, okay, then we don't respect your intellectual property rights, and therefore we can do whatever we want. So therefore, we are now getting into a very dynamic situation of knowledge or knowledge politics, and that is something that is going to become very, very, significant in days and months to come out there. And therefore, the TRIPS agreement and WTO itself is going to be questioned. Is TRIPS going to be taken for a ride now? We need to look at all that in a very, very careful way. Important. We have to ask ourselves the question that when we have the knowledge domain, which according to me is sort of split into two parts. One part of the knowledge domain where I've presented as a triangle, where I'm saying unconstrained public use of the knowledge. And then I put the red part, which is the own knowledge, which is controlled public use. Public can use it, but there's a controlled public use. And that's where the intellectual property rights issues come in. The question is that in the present form, are we squeezing the, the public domain? Are we squeezing the public domain and shrinking it? And if so, that would be a very dangerous signal for the society. And therefore, we need to bring the balance between rights and obligations and address issues of rights and obligations in a very, very systematic manner. Question, therefore, that comes in that over the last 5 decades or 6 decades, is the IPR balloon trying to expand beyond its elastic limits? And therefore, we must guard against what I say is the creation of knowledge black holes. I derive this term knowledge black holes from astronomy, where black holes are where the energy goes in and gets locked. The question is, are we creating barriers to knowledge and knowledge black holes where the knowledge gets locked in these black holes and don't come out? Now, if that happens, that would be dangerous for society. Therefore, we need to review all the IPR laws for their relevance in the present context of the digital world and otherwise. And therefore, every IPR professional or student has to take a 360-degree view of all the priorities. And among the priorities would be accessibility of knowledge, and affordability of knowledge is going to play a very important part, where the balancing of accessibility and affordability is going to be important. And therefore, we need to anticipate the future. We need to then adopt or adapt, accommodate what is required to be done, change, or go into a completely sui generis system in an accelerated manner, accentuate it, and also assure that it all goes in the right direction. And importance will be openness, education, knowledge, food security, etc., etc. So there will be conflicting issues, and we need to really address all those conflicting issues. Just very quickly, as we go along, in the last 2 million years or so, as we have developed, you can see that society has developed from a essentially agrarian society to an industrial, to information products, to knowledge products, and now to Internet of Things. However, having said it, I firmly believe, and that's my concept, I firmly believe that we are now moving into what I call as a society 6.5. From society 5, we are moving to society 6.5, which has titanic transformations. And therefore, we are going into a society, we're going to create a new society. And what will be the composition of the new society? The new society is going to have Homo sapiens like you and me. We will have augmented Homo sapiens with embedded, I've removed the word AI, but embedded systems. So there'll be augmented Homo sapiens, augmented animals and microbes with embedded systems, created autonomous systems with creative abilities. Now today, we know that AI systems are also becoming creators, and therefore created autonomous systems with creative, the standard robots as we understand them. And at a later stage, as we keep embedding these autonomous systems into our own bodies, into our own systems, we will undergo a mutation. And therefore, I call them as AI mutated humans over time, selectively suppressed and selectively enhanced characteristics. And therefore, the new hybrid society in the next several years will interface to construct our ways of life together. And all these which will be there will bring in very strange combinations of all the technologies and converging technologies, where, according to, as all the experts believe, that as autonomous systems learn to be more human, humans must learn to be more humane. So it has to be always 1+. And therefore, the concept of new paradigms in ethical and legal frameworks are going to become very important. The last part of my lecture, therefore, is that when you look at innovations, where you transform, translate, and transfer thoughts into tangible assets, the questions will be whose thoughts? Is it only the Homo sapiens, or enhanced Homo sapiens, or the mutated ones? or completely autonomous system, thinking on its own. Question is who translates, transforms, and transfers to whom? And therefore, what is going to be a very important aspect out there to address will be issues of personhood to be resolved. The definition of a person, a legal person. For example, we know today that there are some issues. There are with the cases which are going on at the moment, elsewhere, where people have tried to you know um, to create or make patent applications using AI systems, and all these are at the moment sub judice and going on in Australia and a couple of other countries. So the personhood issue will have to be resolved out there, and we may have to take some learnings from our own laws. For example, in India, the idol which is in a temple is given a person. That person is that of a minor, and therefore the priest or the becomes the caretaker. And therefore, can we draw some lessons from there? Therefore, IPR experts will have to rethink the whole concept of personhood. And once you think about this personhood, and you apply all these things, and the whole paradigm changes and shifts. And therefore, all the concepts of knowledge ownership, rights, territorial exceptions, etc., all these will change in the next few years. And we need to be alive to the real situation as we go along. And therefore, when we come to it at the horizon and beyond, the impact of evolving digital technologies and all the technologies that I talked about, revisit all knowledge related laws and regulations to address the challenges of an evolving digital ecosystem. In addition to that, I believe that at some stage we'll have to create knowledge pools, knowledge cooperatives to promote the transversality and decompartmentalization and cross-pollination of information knowledge to nurture the development of collective intelligence based on novel knowledge licensing principles that are fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory. I borrowed this term from the standard essential patterns, but the question is that we'll need to maybe one will have to set up, like the World Bank, on all the other issues. Maybe we need to create a World Knowledge Bank. Maybe we need to create, like the International Monetary Fund, we may like to create an International Knowledge Fund. And also, like all the other securities exchange, we may have to create a world knowledge securities exchange to facilitate affordable access to knowledge assets to those in need. So keeping all these in mind, we probably need to relook at ourselves. And therefore, I would like to end my talk here by saying that the future that lays ahead for all the professionals in IP is not to go back and rehash what is already known, but take advantage of what is known, look into the future, look beyond the horizon, and then try and have a debate as to what the future holds for us in intellectual property rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your knowledge with us. Um, your your slides and your presentation was certainly very insightful, and they have inspired, I suppose, all of the listeners today to look beyond the horizon and ask pertinent IPR questions. We also have Professor Nindya Sarkar who would like to extend a vote of thanks to you and all the sponsors that have made this event possible today. So
Thank
if
you very much.
Dr. Sarkar is there, I'd like to hand over to him.